Sometimes the monumental mountains of the West are a great alternative to Bob's iconic snowy peaks. Today's video is all about Rocky Mountains. Let's get into it. So I already have some pre-mixed colors. I've got my mountain mixture, which is some alizarin crimson, Van Dyke brown, little dark sienna, midnight black, and Prussian blue. Then I made the shadow color for my mountain, and the shadow color is Prussian blue, a midnight black, and a little bit of bright red, believe it or not. And then I've got the mountain highlight mixture, which is Van Dyke brown, bright red, and titanium white. And I'm going to start with my mountain mixture. Cutting across, get my little roll of paint. And I have on there, I don't know if you could see it, there's like a little piece that's hanging over. Just gonna get rid of that, because that'll come up above your mountain and you're not gonna be happy. So make sure you always have a nice clean load. And there we are, I'm committed. Uh-oh, what am I gonna do? So I'm gonna start moving. And I want you to notice a couple of things as I do this and start making my mountain shape, is that I'm holding the knife by the ferrule with two fingers. These two fingers are just kind of like my guide fingers, just nice and light. I am not putting my finger on the blade at all. That is very important. So I'm going to come back over here and just get a little shape. I like it a little square on these mountains. They're usually a little bit more square. It's going to come across, and then there's going to be a little cliff, and then it's going to come up a little bit. And there's going to be a little piece that's going to come out. And there he is. And to pick up more paint, I'll just scrape some of what I have, and that will give me a little bit more paint that I can keep on going. Or I could stop, reload. It's up to you. It's your world. So it has maybe a little peak right here. And then that peak comes down, and there's going to be another peak here. There's going to be a lot of peaks on this mountain. Because I want to show you what to do. You don't have to put as many peaks on your mountain. You can just do 2, 1, 5, 10. It's your world. Whatever fits into your world is what you could do. Now, once I have all this in here, if you notice, I'm trying to take the paint off, and I'm doing a real scrape. And as I scrape, I'm going to wipe out the knife, because I want to remove some of that excess paint. And you can hear how hard I'm scraping. And as I'm scraping, what's happening too is it's pushing the color. The knife is pushing the color into the tooth of the canvas, and it's grabbing it. And it's going to take what it wants and leave the rest of it for me. And at this point, I'm still not committed in my shape. If I wanted to come in, make that peak a little bigger, if I wanted to make something a little bit more, or maybe I wanted a little bit more of an edge over here, you can keep playing. But I'm really scraping hard to get all that excess off. It's kind of fun. You can get your frustrations out. Keep scraping it off. All right. Now that I have that, I'm going to go to a 1-inch. I happen to have a clean 1-inch. You can use a 2-inch, whatever makes you happy. And I'm going to come up just under what I did. And then I'm going to pull in the direction that I want to go. So this particular peak is going to go off to the right. And it's going to come down a little bit. And then it's going to have a little backside. And then it's going to have this little peak here. It's going to come down. And this little peak is going to come and have its own little shadow and a peak here. So you can actually start drawing your mountain as you're going, which is kind of neat. It was something that Bob taught me. You know, we learned a lot in certification class, but I did learn a lot sitting at Bob's feet and watching him paint. And I love to watch this part to see how a mountain could take shape without even putting any highlights and shadows on it, which I thought was really cool. If you pick up too much paint on your brush, you can always pull, stop, wipe it off. One thing I'm being very careful of, though, is making sure that I'm not going beyond my edges. If you do go beyond your edges, the way to fix that would be that you're going to have to go in and take your knife and make your peak just a little bit bigger to get rid of that fuzzy edge that might come up. So in here, it's going to come down straight. This is going to come down this way. So I'm already thinking in my mind how I want this mountain to look. This little peak might come forward, and I'm not committed. I can still change this at any time. And once I have everything pulled out, I can exit and just make it a little bit softer. And also by doing this and pushing and pulling and softening, it starts now, you have the base. So good place to start. So now I want to put in a little bit of Van Dyke brown. Cut across and down and get a little roll of paint. And anywhere that I think I might have a highlight, I'm going to hold the knife the same way where I'm grasping it by the ferrule. Okay, so you cut across and you get your roll of paint. And you can see I've got quite a bit of paint on here. And I'm putting, again, all of this paint anywhere that I think I might want to highlight for this mountain. So I'm going to come across that way, get another roll. I'm just going to keep repeating. And again, at this point, because it's a brown mountain is why I'm putting in these darks first. The brown really helps when you go to put the highlight colors in. And I'm excited for you to see that step, but I don't want to rush it. I want to take my time. I want to think about my shape and form. So I'll pull a little bit this way, push it down, grab some more. Then maybe this peak is going to come down this way and across. And keep smoothing out your color. And when I say smoothing out, after you've cut it a few times, you've got a lot of holes. Just push it all back out again and start over. And start with a clean knife and grab again. And get your roll. So here I've got a little bit more. Maybe it's going to come down this way and around. And the brown mountain is, everything is about the same as doing a white mountain, a nice snow-capped mountain, except for putting this brown on first. The brown really does something for it. And I might have something, a little something happening here and around. And I got a little bit happening here. So I think I have enough of that brown undercolor that you can get the idea of how my mountain is going to look. So now I'm going to go into some of my highlight color, which I have right here. I'm going to push that down flat. Cut across again, same roll of paint each time we go. And now I'm going to go over what I did. And I can refine my mountain a little bit by doing that little touch. And you can shake your knife as you come across. And what you're looking for is that beautiful breaking that happens. Cutting across again, getting some more. And I'm going to make this one kind of join with that one and come across. Now before I do any more highlights, maybe I want to put in a little bit of a shadow color, which I already have mixed up here. And the shadow color, if you have little areas like this, you don't have to use the big knife to put it in. You can switch to the little knife, or you could use this little edge of the blade right here to fit into those little areas if you don't want to switch back and forth between knives. So I'll show you both ways. So all I do is I scrape this way, so I get that little roll of paint right on the edge of that little point of the knife, that little part. And maybe in here, I'm going to come up, touch my brown, and come down. And there's my little highlight. I mean, my little shadow underneath my highlight, excuse me. Or you can switch knives. You're not committed. Get the little roll of paint, and maybe on this one, I'll just pull little shadow. And you can put shadow wherever you want. You could put shadow in the middle of your mountain. It doesn't only have to be by the peaks. Again, this is the type of thing you can go back and forth, you can play with. I love making the mountains. When I was practicing to be a certified instructor, I bought a big giant canvas. I boxed it off into quarters, and I'd come home from work at night, go into one of those boxes, and I would start painting mountains. And I would highlight them, and I'd shadow them, and I'd scrape it off. And I'd highlight it, and I'd shadow, scrape it off. And I just kept doing that over and over and over again. I'm going to cut across into my shadow color again, because I want a little shadow right here. And see how I kind of come up a little bit into that paint, and then I pull. Come up a little into the paint and pull. And maybe in here, there's a little bit of shadow. I mean, you can go crazy with this. I'll grab a little bit on the edge of this knife, and I can just touch, put a little shadow wherever I want, maybe a little shadow in there. Or you don't have to do it at all. It's up to you. Go across again, back into my highlight color, and right here. I like doing the little shake, because sometimes it helps that paint to start moving a little bit better for you. You don't have to, again, it's your world, but I just find it gives that a little easier sometimes. Or you could just pull it down straight. But it's very effective when you're coming around a curve like this and you want to pull to the side. Now I'll go back into a little bit more of my shadow color. And right in here, I want a little shadow there. Maybe a little bit right there. The shadows that are going to be behind the peak over here, those I want to pull down. And when I say pull down, I'm going to get that little roll of paint again on the edge of the blade. And I'm going to come up here and just pull it down straight. Just gives it that dark, mysterious background. And back over here, if I want it to be even darker, I can add a little bit of midnight black to my color. And I can actually change the flavor a little bit of my shadows. You don't have to be committed to one color. It might get darker and more blue in different spots. If you've ever seen the Brown Mountains in Colorado and Vegas and all those other places, they change colors so fast because as the sun is moving around, it's fascinating to watch and see them change colors right before your eyes. So I'm going to pull a little bit more dark here. You can also just use the straight edge of the knife. And now I'll go back into my regular lighter blue color and maybe right here. There's a little peak that kind of goes right in front of that. You hear that? How I'm using very light pressure, but it still makes that wonderful noise. Go back to that color and maybe right under here. Oops, I got a little flyaway again. Come back up here. I'm just going to pull a little bit of that down right there because I think this needs to go in front of that. See how I can change my mind and you push a peak back just by making those changes? Maybe a little bit here and pull that a little bit. Oh yeah, I'm loving that blue. Is really bringing out that mountain. Going back to some of my highlight color, and I don't want to forget this little guy. He needs his own little highlight right there. And maybe, well, I don't know, maybe the sun is just kissing the top of that peak right there. Now this mountain is not done. A lot of these mountains have a lot of red in them. So I'm actually going to go into straight bright red, maybe even a little bit of Indian yellow, because as the sun is setting, which is what's happening here, it's going to cast some reds and some yellows into these highlights. So you can play with your mountain in whatever colors that you want. So I have bright red. I just mixed a little Indian yellow and bright red, and then my straight Indian yellow. And wherever I think the sun is going to hit this, and maybe right here, because I've got this line, maybe there's just the tiniest bit. Look at that, of Indian yellow that just kind of sparkles in the setting sun. And then as it moves away from there, maybe a little bit. Ooh, look at that. That bright red kind of sparkles it right there. If it's too much or you want to knock it back a little bit, just go back into your regular color and you can go over it one more time. Set it back if you want to, but personally I do love the way that red looks, and I think it would be more red over here because that's where I've got that red in the sky, and maybe just a little bit is hitting. I'm just going to dance a little bit of that color right there. Wipe out my knife, and then I'm just going to smooth it out just a little bit. But I love the way that looks. I think this is probably a little too bright. See, I'm going to show you how you can even play with that. So I'm going to take a little bit more sienna into my color, my highlight color, and maybe this one needs to just be knocked back a little bit, be a little bit darker of a highlight color. And being I picked up so much of that brown, I'll come back in here and whoosh, just put it right in front. So as you can see, you can go back and forth with this. If you don't like I said, if there's too much red, if there's too much yellow, just go back over it again and soften it out. It's your world. You can put more shadows, more highlights. You can put another mountain range in front. What we're trying to do is just give you the ideas of what you could do for these mountains. But always, to finish up your mountain, I'm going to take a 2-inch brush, a clean, dry 2-inch, and I'm just going to tap the base. One of the biggest mistakes that I see from students is when they're tapping out the base, they keep tapping, tapping, tapping harder and harder. When you're doing this tap, it's so light. It sounds on the canvas like you're really tapping hard, but you're not. It's just a very light touch. And then very gently, it's a press, release, very quickly kind of stroke, just to soften the base of the mountain. Same thing for the other side. Don't want to leave that side out. A little bit of tapping. And then I'm going to brush up, soften it out. And then usually in a Bob Ross painting at this point, he would take a color, and being we're in the desert near the mountains, I'll go into some of the Van Dyke brown and some of my highlight color, and I'll just tap in maybe a little foothill or something that lives around it. I think I need a little red. A little bright red. Maybe some of your grasses go up the mountain a little bit and your little foothills. There are a lot of foothills out west. They're all so beautiful. You can move mountains, it's true. Show us your mountains using #brushstrokes. See you real soon.